The first sign was the sky itself. A strange shimmer appeared above the clouds, a ripple of light that moved as though the air itself were bending. At first, people thought it was a rare weather phenomenon, something beautiful but harmless. Then the shimmer grew, solidifying into a shape that defied imagination. Across the globe, cities paused in awe and fear as a ship massive, glimmering, and unlike anything Earth had ever seen, hovered silently in orbit. It was unlike any human-made vessel. Its surface pulsed with light in patterns that seemed almost alive, as though the ship itself were aware of every eye watching it. Satellites and space telescopes recorded the event, but no data could fully capture the scale and detail of the alien craft. For the first time, humanity truly understood that it was not alone. World governments convened in emergency sessions. Military commanders urged caution, fearing invasion. Scientists, meanwhile, were mesmerized. The ship's energy readings defied conventional physics, and attempts to communicate using standard radio frequencies produced only patterns of light that seemed almost like a language, but one humans could not interpret. The planet held its collective breath. Then, without warning, a projection appeared above the largest cities. It was tall, luminous, and regal. The being spoke in a voice that resonated in every corner of Earth, clear and understandable, even though its mouth did not move. The projection identified itself as the queen of the alien civilization, a species called the Liari. Her form was beautiful and commanding, her eyes bright with intelligence and curiosity. Humanity had imagined first contact in countless ways, but none had prepared them for this. "I come in peace," the queen said. "But peace comes with a condition. To unite our worlds and prevent conflict, I must join myself to one of you. I must marry a human." For a moment, the world was silent. The announcement spread faster than any news broadcast could. Governments struggled to respond. Was this a demand? A test? Some incomprehensible alien custom? Panic and outrage erupted. People argued in homes, offices, and streets. Social media exploded with speculation. Some were fascinated by the possibility of contact. Others were terrified. The idea that a single human could represent the entire species of Earth was overwhelming. Politicians and leaders debated endlessly. Could humanity even trust the Queen? What would be the consequences of refusal? Was it possible to refuse at all? And how could they choose a representative from over 7 billion people? Amid the confusion, a council was formed. The world's greatest diplomats, scientists, and leaders gathered to determine a fair process. They argued about the criteria for selecting a candidate. It could not be a person chosen for power or fame, they agreed. The representative had to embody humanity's best qualities: intelligence, courage, compassion, and the ability to understand and communicate with a species far beyond human knowledge. Meanwhile, ordinary people watched anxiously. In homes and cities across the globe, they discussed what it meant to be human. Many feared the worst, imagining war or subjugation. Others felt hope. Perhaps this was a chance to prove humanity's worth, to show the galaxy that humans were not primitive or reckless, but capable of thought, morality, and creativity. After days of debate and evaluation, one candidate emerged. Not a politician, nor a celebrity, but a young diplomat known for bridging divides in times of conflict. This person had solved disputes between nations through dialogue rather than force, showing patience and reasoning where others saw only tension. The council believed this candidate could represent not only Earth but the human spirit itself. When the candidate was informed of the selection, they were stunned. The weight of the entire planet seemed to settle on their shoulders. They understood the responsibility. Failure could mean disaster. Success could define humanity's place in the stars. Despite fear, they accepted the mission. They were determined to meet the Queen, not with naivety, but with courage and honesty. The journey to the alien ship was unlike anything the candidate had ever experienced. When they arrived, they were greeted not by doors or corridors, but by an open expanse that seemed to float in midair. The interior of the ship defied human comprehension. Gravity shifted subtly in different areas. Transparent floors revealed layers of technology beneath, moving like living circuits. Organic forms intertwined with machinery, plants growing among the glowing walls. It was both beautiful and disorienting. The queen appeared to greet them personally. She radiated authority and curiosity, and her presence demanded attention. She did not approach with force, nor with intimidation. Instead, her eyes studied the candidate with what seemed like genuine interest, evaluating not just their mind, but their character. "You have been chosen because you represent the best of your species," she said. "But representation alone is not enough. You must understand my people, and they must understand you. Only then can true peace exist." The candidate nodded, understanding that this was not a test of strength, but of understanding. Over the following days, the queen guided them through the ship, explaining Liari culture, philosophy, and history. The Liari were ancient, wise, and technologically advanced far beyond human comprehension. Yet despite their power, they had weaknesses: rigidity in thought, hesitation in emotional understanding, and a lack of experience with unpredictable behavior traits humans often excelled in. The candidate observed the queen interacting with her advisors and citizens. She treated them with respect, listening to ideas, weighing possibilities, and balancing logic with emotion. It became clear that her demand for marriage was not a whim, but a deeply significant act for her people, a symbolic union that would demonstrate trust, mutual respect, and cooperation. The candidate also faced personal challenges. The Liari tested their ability to navigate unfamiliar rules, to make ethical decisions in situations without clear right or wrong answers. Sometimes the trials were subtle. Negotiating a dispute among Liari scholars, interpreting ancient texts, or choosing between options where every choice carried consequences. Each time, the candidate demonstrated patience, empathy, and creative thinking, earning the quiet approval of the queen and her advisors. Back on Earth, tension remained high. News outlets reported the candidate's progress, though most details were classified. Rumors spread, causing debates in classrooms, cafes, and governments alike. Some feared manipulation or betrayal. Others saw the potential for unity, a moment when humanity could prove it was capable of growth, learning, and cooperation on a galactic scale. As days passed aboard the ship, a mutual understanding began to develop between the queen and the candidate. It was not friendship in the human sense, nor romance, but a bond of respect and recognition. The queen was impressed by the candidate's intelligence, patience, and ability to remain calm under pressure. The candidate, in turn, marveled at the queen's wisdom, her clarity of thought, and her deep sense of responsibility to her people. One evening, as the two observed the stars through a vast transparent wall of the ship, the queen spoke quietly. "Your species is young in the galaxy, yet you possess qualities that even my people admire. Courage, adaptability, empathy. These are rare. You may not understand yet, but I believe humanity can become a true partner in the universe." The candidate felt a mixture of pride and humility. Pride in being chosen, yes, but also humility in recognizing the vast gulf between human knowledge and Liari understanding. They realized that their role was not to conquer or impress, but to show humanity's best traits through action, honesty, and understanding. The first part of their journey ended with a sense of purpose. The candidate had entered the alien world as a representative of Earth, unsure if humans could meet the Queen's expectations. Now, they understood that peace would require more than submission or negotiation. It would require humans to demonstrate their worth through character, courage, and cooperation. As the ship drifted silently in orbit, the candidate looked out at the tiny blue planet below. Humanity was fragile, complicated, and sometimes reckless, yet full of potential. If they could succeed, Earth would take its first true step into the stars, not as a subject of fear, but as a respected and capable civilization. The weight of that realization settled on their shoulders, but instead of fear, it brought determination. And above, the alien queen watched, confident, yet cautious, knowing that the future of her people and humanity now rested in choices that would be made together, one step at a time. The candidate awoke to a light unlike anything on Earth. Soft and warm, it filtered through the walls of the alien chamber, shifting like liquid gold. The room had no corners, no visible doors. And yet the candidate felt no discomfort. Gravity seemed to settle naturally, guided by invisible hands. It was a reminder that aboard the Queen's ship, nothing followed the rules humans were used to, and yet everything worked perfectly. As the candidate dressed in simple clothing provided by the Liari, a soft chime echoed through the room. It was the Queen's way of summoning them. When they arrived, she was already waiting, standing in a courtyard of flowing light. The air shimmered around her, and plants with colors beyond human perception swayed gently without any breeze. "Today," the Queen said, "you will learn how we think and why we value certain things above all else. Observation alone is not enough. You must interact, make choices, and see the consequences of each action." The candidate nodded, heart pounding. Each day brought new challenges, and each challenge revealed how far humanity still had to grow. Today, they were to engage in a simulation of Liari diplomacy, designed to mirror real conflicts in their civilization. The Queen explained the rules. Each participant would take a role, representing factions with different priorities. Missteps could cost virtual allies or resources. Success depended on understanding not just logic, but the motivations and emotions of those involved. The simulation began. The candidate quickly realized that the Liari valued honor, patience, and foresight above all else. Quick decisions or emotional reactions often worsened situations. At first, they struggled to anticipate the subtle cues of the alien delegates. Their body language, the rhythm of their speech, and even the glow in their eyes all conveyed meaning. Misreading a single signal could have cascading effects, but slowly, the candidate adapted. They began to recognize patterns, to see connections that were not immediately obvious. They suggested compromises that honored the principles of both sides while avoiding unnecessary conflict. The simulation responded dynamically, challenging them with unexpected dilemmas. Each choice tested not only intellect but character. The Queen observed quietly. She did not intervene, yet her presence was like a steady current, guiding without pushing. After the session, she spoke. "You handled the situation well. You listened, adapted, and acted with fairness. These qualities are rare, even among my people." The candidate felt a mixture of relief and pride. The praise was genuine, yet it reminded them that their journey had only just begun. Each success opened new doors, and each door revealed challenges that were as subtle as they were complex. Over the following days, the candidate explored the ship and its culture. The Liari had developed technology that seemed indistinguishable from nature. Gardens floated in midair, feeding and cleaning themselves. Energy flowed seamlessly, powering systems without visible machinery. Knowledge was shared openly, and even the youngest Liari were taught to respect both intellect and ethics. One day, the Queen led the candidate to a chamber filled with artifacts. Each object told a story, tools used by ancient Liari, writings that recorded centuries of thought, and art that expressed ideas beyond words. She explained the significance of each, not as history lessons, but as living examples of values, perseverance, and morality. "You will not understand everything," she said, "but you will understand why these values matter. And through your understanding, my people will understand you." The candidate realized that the marriage demanded more than diplomacy. It demanded deep empathy and comprehension. They had to grasp the soul of an alien civilization while remaining true to human principles. It was a challenge unlike any on Earth, and yet it invigorated them. Outside the chamber, the candidate observed Liari citizens in their daily routines. Their movements were fluid, precise, and purposeful. Conversations were thoughtful, often silent gestures carrying meaning that words could not convey. Humans aboard the ship were rare, and curiosity followed them everywhere, but not with hostility. The Liari seemed to regard the candidate as a bridge, a living symbol of potential collaboration. The Queen's trials were not limited to observation or diplomacy. She introduced physical challenges as well. Though unlike human tests of strength, these required coordination, precision, and trust. The candidate learned to navigate corridors where gravity shifted subtly, to interact with devices that responded to thought and emotion rather than touch, and to move through zones where perception itself seemed altered. During one exercise, the candidate and the Queen worked together to solve a problem affecting the ship's energy flow. A section of the system was failing, and the task required precise timing, analysis, and coordination. At first, the candidate felt overwhelmed. Every mistake caused ripple effects, alarms, and stress. But through calm reasoning and clear communication, they managed to stabilize the system. The Queen nodded, her expression a mixture of approval and relief. You adapted quickly. Humans may be young, but you have a unique ability to face uncertainty with creativity and resilience. That is a strength my people admire. Evenings were spent in discussion. The Queen encouraged the candidate to share human perspectives, to explain why humans valued certain principles, and how societies functioned despite flaws. In turn, she offered insights into Liari ethics, politics, and philosophy. These conversations were not lectures but exchanges, allowing both sides to learn from each other. One night, the candidate looked out at the stars through the ship's observation deck. The vastness of space, dotted with countless worlds, reminded them of how small Earth seemed. And yet, they also felt pride. Humanity had survived, grown, and thrived in its own corner of the galaxy. If they could succeed here, aboard the Queen's ship, they could prove that humans could be allies, thinkers, and innovators on a cosmic scale. The bond between the candidate and the Queen deepened. It was subtle, formed not through words alone but through shared experiences, mutual respect, and understanding. The candidate realized that the Queen did not expect blind obedience, nor did she demand conformity. She sought a partnership built on honesty, intelligence, and moral integrity. Challenges continued. Some Liari were skeptical of humans, viewing them as unpredictable or fragile. The candidate had to navigate delicate situations, demonstrating patience and fairness. In one instance, a Liari counselor questioned the candidate's judgment in a minor dispute. Instead of reacting defensively, the candidate listened, asked clarifying questions, and proposed a solution that satisfied both sides. The counselor's expression softened, a subtle acknowledgement of respect. Through these experiences, the candidate began to understand why the Queen's marriage proposal was more than symbolic. It was a gesture of trust, a commitment that the two civilizations could coexist peacefully, and it became clear that this trust could only be earned through action, through demonstration of humanity's best qualities. Communication with Earth continued, though carefully monitored. Messages reassured the public that the candidate was safe, that progress was being made, and that peace remained the goal. Still, tension remained. Citizens debated, speculated, and hoped. The candidate understood that every decision aboard the ship reflected not just on themselves, but on the entire human race. One day, the Queen led the candidate to a vast arena where a simulated diplomatic scenario was staged. Multiple Liari factions, each with conflicting priorities, had to be guided toward resolution. The candidate had to negotiate, strategize, and anticipate moves that even experienced Liari diplomats found challenging. At first, mistakes were made. The candidate misinterpreted subtle gestures, overlooked a minor rule, and nearly derailed the process. But rather than panicking, they paused, observed, and recalculated. Slowly, the situation shifted in their favor. With careful reasoning, they guided the factions toward a compromise that balanced fairness with practicality. The Queen observed silently, her expression unreadable. After the simulation, she finally spoke. "You have done well. Not because you followed instructions perfectly, but because you adapted, learned, and acted with integrity. These are the qualities that matter in any alliance." The candidate realized that this was the essence of the Liari test. Not perfection, but the ability to learn, adapt, and demonstrate moral strength under pressure. They were beginning to see that humanity's unpredictability, creativity, and resilience were not weaknesses, but strengths in a universe that valued more than raw power or knowledge. By the end of the second part of their journey, the candidate felt a profound sense of purpose. Each day brought new challenges, new lessons, and new opportunities to demonstrate what humanity could achieve. They were no longer merely a representative. They were a symbol of potential, hope, and the unyielding spirit of their species. And throughout it all, the Queen watched. Not with suspicion, nor with doubt, but with careful attention and respect. She had seen countless civilizations rise and fall, yet humans, despite their flaws and immaturity, possessed something rare, a combination of courage, empathy, and creativity that could change the course of history. The journey was far from over. Greater trials awaited, conflicts both internal and external would arise, and the path to unity between humans and Liari would not be simple. Yet the candidate knew this. Humanity had a chance, not because they were the strongest or the most advanced, but because they were capable of growth, understanding, and true courage. As the ship drifted silently above Earth, the candidate felt a deep connection not only to the Queen, but to their home planet, to the people they represented, and to the possibility of a future where humans could shine in the galaxy. And in that moment, the weight of responsibility transformed into determination, a quiet confidence that humanity could meet the challenges ahead. The candidate had grown accustomed to life aboard the Queen's ship, yet a sense of tension hung in the air that even their training could not erase. News had reached them that not all Liari agreed with the idea of a human representing Earth. Some counselors whispered that humans were reckless, unpredictable, and untested. The Queen had warned the candidate that these dissenters could create obstacles, but the reality of the opposition was far more challenging than they had anticipated. It began subtly, with small incidents. Conversations that ended abruptly when the candidate entered, suspicious glances, and minor technical malfunctions during simulations. At first, the candidate wondered if they were imagining hostility. But over time, patterns emerged. Certain Liari deliberately complicated tasks, and in one scenario, the candidate's instructions were ignored by automated systems, forcing them to improvise. The Queen observed quietly, but her expression remained unreadable. She did not intervene, and this forced the candidate to rely entirely on their own judgment. It was a test of patience, adaptability, and resilience qualities that humans often developed through experience, struggle, and determination. One day, a more serious crisis emerged. A critical section of the ship's communication network failed, threatening to cut off Earth from real-time updates. The failure was no accident. A group of dissenting Liari had deliberately introduced the malfunction to demonstrate the candidate's inadequacy. Panic flickered in the minds of those aboard, yet the candidate remained calm. They quickly assessed the situation, analyzing patterns in system behavior. Using logic, observation, and a willingness to experiment, they began to restore communication piece by piece. Hours passed in intense focus. The candidate adjusted parameters, rerouted energy, and collaborated with both willing Liari engineers and the ship's artificial intelligence. Sweat dampened their brow, but they refused to give in to fear. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, communication was restored. Data flowed smoothly once more, and Earth received confirmation that the candidate was safe. The Queen appeared then, her expression softening slightly. "You did well," she said. "You faced adversity. Not with anger or despair, but with calmness and determination. That is what I have hoped to see in humanity." The candidate realized that this trial had not been about technical skill alone. It had been about leadership, moral courage, and the ability to inspire confidence even in the face of deliberate opposition. Humanity's strength was not merely in knowledge or technology, but in resilience, creativity, and integrity. Despite the crisis being resolved, tension aboard the ship did not vanish. Some Liari continued to challenge the candidate, questioning decisions and suggesting alternatives meant to confuse. Each challenge tested patience and composure. The candidate discovered that the key was to listen carefully, weigh options, and act decisively without arrogance or fear. At the same time, Earth's leaders grew restless. News of dissent aboard the ship leaked, stirring public debate and concern. Some nations questioned whether humans could handle such responsibility. Others urged trust in the candidate, emphasizing that the qualities which had led to their selection, intelligence, empathy, courage, were exactly what the world needed. One evening, as the candidate walked through a floating garden, they reflected on the journey so far. The plants glowed faintly, feeding from energy currents that pulsed like a heartbeat. The garden's serene atmosphere contrasted sharply with the political tension, yet it reminded the candidate of the possibilities inherent in cooperation and understanding. Life, whether human or Liari, thrived when care, attention, and respect were given. The following day brought another unexpected challenge. A Liari faction, openly opposed to the alliance with humanity, staged a public debate in the Central Council chamber. They questioned the candidate's decisions, suggesting that humans lacked the judgment to navigate complex interstellar politics. The debate drew attention from across the ship and even Earth, where media reported on the unfolding drama with fascination and anxiety. The candidate entered the chamber, feeling the weight of countless eyes upon them. Yet they did not falter. With calm and clarity, they addressed the counselors. They explained not only the reasoning behind their past actions, but the principles that guided humanity: fairness, empathy, and adaptability. They spoke of human achievements, not as boasts, but as evidence that their species could grow, learn, and face challenges beyond imagination. At first, the counselors responded with skepticism, but the candidate did not retreat. They listened, asked questions, and proposed solutions that accounted for both Liari and human perspectives. Slowly, resistance softened. The counselors began to see that the candidate's approach was not naive or reckless, but grounded in careful thought and moral courage. By the end of the debate, even the most vocal skeptics acknowledged the value of humanity's perspective. The Queen observed silently, but the subtle nod of approval she gave at the conclusion was more meaningful than any words. The candidate understood that they were not only negotiating policies, they were shaping perceptions, proving that humanity could meet the demands of a complex, interstellar civilization. That night, the candidate and the Queen shared a moment of reflection. They walked through the observation deck, stars stretching endlessly beyond the glass walls. The candidate spoke of Earth, of its challenges, struggles, and triumphs, and of the hopes of its people. The Queen listened with genuine interest, asking questions and offering insights from her own civilization. "You have proven yourself in ways few of my people could," the Queen said softly. "Not because you are flawless, but because you have faced difficulty and acted with courage and integrity. That is why I trust you, and why I believe humanity has a place in the galaxy." The candidate felt a surge of responsibility. They knew that the decisions made here, aboard this alien ship, would shape the future of their species. Humanity's reputation hung in the balance. Yet they also recognized the opportunity to demonstrate that humans were not merely survivors, but thinkers, leaders, and moral beings capable of rising to extraordinary challenges. Yet the journey was far from complete. A new threat emerged unexpectedly. A Liari faction, dissatisfied with both the candidate and the Queen, attempted to sabotage a critical energy system. The goal was not violence, but demonstration. If the candidate failed, it would cast doubt on humanity's reliability. The sabotage triggered alarms and caused sudden fluctuations in the ship's environment, creating confusion and danger. The candidates sprang into action. They assessed the system, coordinated with engineers, and made split-second decisions to stabilize energy flow. Unlike the previous crisis, this challenge involved unpredictability, requiring both technical skill and the ability to anticipate human and Liari behavior. They adapted quickly, identifying the source of the sabotage and correcting it without panic. The queen arrived shortly after, surveying the situation. She did not scold or intervene but observed the candidate's methods. When stability was restored, she finally spoke. "You handled that with calmness and insight. Your species is young, yet you demonstrate qualities that even my people struggle to cultivate. That is why you are not only a representative but a symbol." Through these trials, the candidate began to understand a deeper truth. The challenges aboard the Queen's ship were not merely about survival or diplomacy. They were a test of humanity's character, the courage to act wisely under pressure, the creativity to find solutions where none seemed possible, and the integrity to remain true to ethical principles, even when others sought to manipulate or deceive. As days passed, the candidate's reputation among the Liari grew. Skeptics softened, allies offered support, and the Queen's confidence in their abilities became evident. More importantly, the candidate felt an internal growth. They were no longer overwhelmed by the alien environment. Instead, they embraced it, learning from its complexities and finding ways to translate human ingenuity into meaningful action. One evening, the candidate participated in a Liari Council meeting. The discussion concerned the broader implications of an alliance with humanity. The candidate offered insights, showing not only strategic thinking but an understanding of morality and ethics. Their contributions were received with respect, a clear sign that humanity was beginning to earn its place in the minds and hearts of the Liari. Despite these successes, the candidate remained aware of the fragility of the situation. Any misstep could undo progress. They understood that their actions reflected the entire human species. Yet, rather than feeling fear, they felt determination. Humanity's strengths, adaptability, courage, empathy, were exactly what the galaxy needed, and they were ready to demonstrate that to both Earth and the Liari. The Queen continued to guide them, not with orders, but through subtle lessons and observations. She introduced increasingly complex scenarios, testing moral judgment, problem-solving, and leadership. Each challenge was designed to push the candidate beyond their comfort zone, forcing them to confront uncertainty and make decisions that carried weight. By the end of this part of the journey, the candidate had faced sabotage, political opposition, and complex simulations, emerging not only successful, but stronger, wiser, and more confident. They had begun to see the larger picture. Humanity was capable of greatness, not through force or dominance, but through courage, intelligence, and moral integrity. And as the Queen watched from her elevated seat, she recognized that the candidate had become more than a representative. They were a bridge between species, a living proof that humans could rise to the challenges of a vast, complex, and sometimes unforgiving universe. Humanity's potential was no longer a question, it was becoming a reality. The candidate gazed out at the stars, reflecting on all they had learned. Earth seemed distant, yet familiar, fragile, yet resilient. They understood that the decisions made aboard the Queen's ship would shape not only the future of interstellar relations but also humanity's understanding of itself. In that moment, a quiet confidence settled over them. They knew that greater challenges awaited, that not all Liari would be convinced, and that Earth itself could face uncertainty. Yet they also knew something far more important. Humanity had something the galaxy needed, and they were ready to show it. The candidate turned to the Queen, who observed with an expression that combined authority and respect. No words were necessary. Both understood that the journey was far from over, yet the foundations of trust, respect, and mutual understanding were being built, one trial at a time. Humanity was proving its worth, not with weapons or dominance, but through courage, intelligence, and integrity. And in doing so, it was beginning to shine. Tension ran high across the alien ship and Earth alike. The candidate knew that the final trials were approaching. The dissenting Liari faction, though weakened by previous demonstrations of human skill and judgment, was determined to challenge the alliance at every opportunity. If they succeeded in undermining the candidate, the fragile trust between species could collapse. The candidate understood the stakes. Failure could mean conflict, mistrust, and perhaps even war. Success could secure a future where humanity had a respected place in the galaxy. The Queen summoned the candidate to the central chamber, a vast space with walls that seemed to ripple like liquid crystal. "Today," she said, "you face the ultimate test. Not only your abilities, but the essence of what humanity represents. You must navigate opposition, prove the value of your people, and demonstrate the qualities that make humans worthy of trust and partnership." The candidate nodded. Despite the weight of responsibility, a sense of calm determination settled within them. They had faced challenges before: complex simulations, sabotage, political opposition, and had emerged stronger each time. The knowledge that humanity's best qualities were being watched and evaluated gave them focus. They understood that courage, intelligence, creativity, and moral integrity were their tools, and they were ready to wield them with care. The first challenge came quickly. A critical council meeting had been called to decide whether the proposed alliance and the symbolic marriage could proceed. The dissenters were numerous and vocal, questioning everything from the candidate's judgment to the wisdom of accepting humans as equals. The council chamber filled with tension, and the candidate felt the weight of every eye upon them. With calm precision, they addressed the council. They spoke of humanity's history, acknowledging flaws and mistakes, yet emphasizing resilience, creativity, and the capacity for moral growth. They highlighted humanity's achievements in science, exploration, and diplomacy, showing how these reflected a species capable of learning and adapting. The Lyari listened, some skeptically, others curiously. The candidate then presented solutions to specific concerns raised by the dissenting faction, showing understanding of both Lyari priorities and human principles. Each response was measured, respectful, and backed by reasoning rather than emotion. Slowly, skepticism began to soften. Some counselors leaned forward, intrigued by the candidate's ability to reconcile conflicting perspectives. As the debate continued, a more dangerous challenge emerged. One of the dissenting Lyari attempted a technical sabotage, targeting the ship's energy grid to create a distraction and undermine confidence in the candidate. Alarms blared, lights flickered, and the chamber trembled slightly as the system compensated. The candidate acted quickly, coordinating with Lyari engineers to stabilize the grid while maintaining their composure in front of the council. By addressing both the technical crisis and the political debate simultaneously, the candidate demonstrated a remarkable combination of intellect, adaptability, and calm leadership. The council watched in astonishment as the human representative not only solved the problem but also reassured both Lyari and human observers that order had been restored. When the alarms subsided and systems stabilized, the Queen finally spoke. "You have acted with wisdom, courage, and integrity. You have faced opposition, chaos, and doubt, and yet you have remained true to yourself and to the principles that make your species strong. That is why I trust you." ADS. The candidate felt a deep sense of relief and purpose. They realized that the trials had never been about proving superiority in combat or technology. The real measure was character, how one faced challenges, understood others, and acted with fairness and courage. Humanity had the potential not because of weapons or raw intelligence, but because of resilience, empathy, and creativity. With the council impressed and opposition waning, the Queen made her decision clear. The marriage would proceed, not as a personal arrangement alone, but as a symbolic act of unity and trust between species. The candidate's role was more than ceremonial. It represented humanity's readiness to enter a broader cosmic stage as an equal partner. Preparations for the ceremony began. The ship's architecture transformed into a breathtaking display of light and elegance. Lyari and human observers gathered, witnessing a union that symbolized cooperation, mutual respect, and hope. The candidate felt both nervous and proud, understanding that the eyes of Earth and the galaxy were upon them. During the ceremony, the Queen spoke of the importance of trust, collaboration, and shared ideals. She emphasized that the marriage was a commitment to peace and mutual growth, a promise that both species would learn from each other and face challenges together. The candidate stood beside her, aware that their presence represented the hopes, fears, and potential of all humanity. As the ceremony concluded, messages were sent to Earth. Citizens watched in awe as the symbolic union was broadcast, realizing that humanity had proven itself in ways few could have imagined. Doubts and fears transformed into admiration, pride, and hope. For the first time, humans understood that they had something unique to offer the galaxy. Not dominance, but intelligence, courage, creativity, and empathy. After the ceremony, the Queen and the candidate engaged in discussions that were both philosophical and practical. They explored shared goals for interstellar collaboration, science, exploration, cultural exchange, and the resolution of potential conflicts through diplomacy rather than violence. The candidate found that the Queen valued human unpredictability and creativity, qualities that could bring new solutions to problems even a technologically advanced civilization could not foresee. The candidate also visited Earth briefly, sharing experiences, insights, and knowledge gained aboard the ship. They spoke to leaders, scientists, and citizens, emphasizing that humanity's worth was not measured by might or wealth, but by the capacity to act with wisdom, courage, and integrity. People listened, inspired by the realization that their species had truly earned a place among the stars. Back aboard the ship, life settled into a new rhythm. The candidate and the Queen continued their work together, not as ruler and subject, but as partners and collaborators. Projects that once seemed impossible now progressed through mutual understanding and shared effort. Humanity's influence grew, not through coercion or force, but through respect, intellect, and moral strength. Despite the triumphs, challenges remained. The dissenting Liari had not vanished entirely, and both species faced unknown threats in the wider galaxy. Yet the foundation of trust and cooperation was solid, established through trials that tested character rather than weapons. Humanity had demonstrated that it could rise to challenges, adapt to alien cultures, and act with wisdom and courage even under pressure. The candidate reflected on the journey. From the first moment they had set foot aboard the alien ship, through trials, debates, and crises, they had grown as an individual and as a representative of Earth. They had learned that true strength lay not in domination, but in collaboration, understanding, and ethical action. They had discovered that humanity's greatest weapons were its intellect, creativity, empathy, and courage. In time, the alliance flourished. Humans and Liari shared knowledge, technology, and culture. Joint missions explored distant star systems. Scientific collaboration expanded, understanding of the universe, and cultural exchanges fostered mutual respect. Humanity's potential became evident to other civilizations as well, who marveled at the species that had risen not by force, but by wisdom and integrity. The candidate, now a seasoned diplomat and symbol of humanity's promise, stood beside the Queen on the observation deck. Stars stretched infinitely in every direction. Each one, a possibility. A world. A challenge. Earth, small and fragile in the distance, glowed with life and resilience. "You have done more than represent your species," the Queen said. "You have shown that humans are capable of greatness. Not through weapons or conquest, but through courage, intelligence, and heart. That is why I trust humanity, and that is why the galaxy will too." The candidate felt a quiet pride, tempered by humility. They understood that the journey had not ended, that new challenges awaited. But they also knew that humanity had earned the right to face them. The species was no longer an uncertain presence in the galaxy, but a partner capable of shaping its own destiny. And in that moment, as Earth rotated silently below and the stars stretched endlessly beyond, humanity's potential was clear. It was a potential built not on fear or force, but on the qualities that define them at their best. Courage in adversity, creativity in problem-solving, empathy for others, and the relentless pursuit of understanding. The Queen placed a hand upon the candidate's shoulder, a gesture of trust and partnership. Together, they looked out into the cosmos, knowing that the journey ahead would be long and filled with unknowns. Yet, they also knew that with cooperation, wisdom, and courage, humanity would not only survive, but thrive. The galaxy, once distant and intimidating, was now a place where humans could leave their mark. Not through domination, but through character, intelligence, and unyielding spirit. And so, a new chapter began. One in which humanity's light shone brightly, inspiring both themselves and others, proving to the universe that humans were a species worth trusting, respecting, and admiring. Through trials, challenges, and triumphs, the candidate had learned the truth of the Queen's demand. Marriage was not merely a symbolic act, it was a testament to trust, cooperation, and shared ideals. And in fulfilling that role, humanity had earned its place among the stars. The journey was only beginning, but the foundations were strong. Humans had proven that they could rise to challenges, face adversity with courage, and act with wisdom. The galaxy had taken notice, and Earth's citizens celebrated not because they had been saved, but because they had proven their worth. And in that shining moment, it became clear. Humanity's greatest power was itself. Their ability to think, adapt, care, and create these were qualities no technology or weapon could replicate. In a universe filled with wonders and dangers, humans had shown that they could not only survive, but inspire, lead, and thrive. The candidate stood tall beside the Queen, ready for the challenges ahead, knowing that humanity had earned its chance, its respect, and its place among the stars. And as the ship drifted through the infinite blackness, humanity's light, determination, and courage shone brighter than ever.